Welcome to another episode of Tarot here on RUE MORGUE TV. In this series, we look at the use of tarot cards in horror films. And my name is Laura Hokstad. I am a tarot card reader and your host of the show. And you know I have been looking forward to talking about this particular movie. The movie we are going to talk about today is the 2024 horror film Tarot. The film is loosely based on a 1992 book by Nicholas Adams called Horoscopes. And the film opens with a group of friends who have rented out a mansion for a friend's birthday. And as they're partying, they suddenly realize they've ran out of booze. So they start exploring this mansion in search of more alcohol. But what they find instead is a creepy basement full of cursed objects, one of which looks strikingly similar to this.
Oh, guys, what about Naked Go Fishy? Or Strip Poker, perhaps? Oh, never mind. These are tarot cards anyway.
Paxton, it's pronounced tarot.
What they find in the box is a handmade tarot deck. The deck that they use in the film was actually created by an artist named Trevor Henderson and Richard Wells. And they worked together with the creature designer Dan Martin. And you may have seen some of Dan Martin's work in some of Brandon Cronenberg's recent films, such as Possessor and Infinity Pool. So the artwork is really unique in that deck. I really did enjoy the way that they translated the cards into these kind of like demonic tarot demons that we see throughout the film. Now, because I couldn't get that deck, I found a deck that I had that kind of has similar energy. And the one that I'm going to be using today is the Shadowland Tarot. And this deck was actually created by a Toronto artist and witch and tarot reader named Monica Bodersky. One of the friends in the group, whose name is Haley, is actually a tarot card reader, and the friends ask her to read their cards with this newfound deck. Now, at first, Haley is like a little nervous to do so, and she says in the film that it is bad luck to read another tarot reader's deck. And this is kind of an old superstition, but I do tend to agree with her on this one because I feel like unless you have permission to do so, I wouldn't really feel comfortable touching another tarot reader's deck either. If we think about it, you know, people put a lot of time and energy into connecting with their deck and understanding it. And yeah, I just wouldn't feel comfortable just grabbing somebody's deck and reading. So I'm on Haley's side on that one. So Haley tells her friends that she is going to draw 12 cards for each of them to quote unquote read their horoscope. And so what she does is she ends up putting cards in a circle, each one representing a sign in the zodiac. And then on top of that, she pulls a final card, a clarifying card, or a 13th card. I am going to today choose to only look at the 13th card that she pulls for each of her friends. Because if we were to go through everybody's full reading, this video would be like 4 hours long and it would just be a lot. So, I mean, you guys can let me know if you want me to do a deeper breakdown for each of the characters and their full reading. The most important card is that 13th card that Haley pulls for each of them, because what the friends don't know is that the deck they've just found is actually a cursed deck. So, as Haley is pulling this final card, she doesn't know, and her friends don't know, that that card is going to come to life, haunt them, and ultimately try and kill them.
You are a Libra. I can vouch for that.
Wow, that's
All right.
outed.
You're investigative by nature, and you need to make sense of things, but your curiosity often leads you into the unknown. You're climbing the ladder towards success, but the High Priestess reversed is a warning to maybe slow down.
When Haley begins to read for her friends, the first person she reads for is Elise, who is the birthday girl. And we learn that she's a Libra. And after Haley pulls the 12 zodiac cards, she grabs the final card, which is the High Priestess. And the warning that comes with this card from Haley is Elise is climbing the ladder to success, but she has to be very cautious because she might receive a quote-unquote crushing blow. that isn't necessarily what this card represents. The High Priestess is a card all about trusting your intuition and that inner kind of feminine knowledge, that connection to the divine feminine. And having this card related to climbing ladders and crushing blows is not really relevant. But what it is relevant to is foreshadowing how Elise is going to die later on in the film. So we're starting to get the feeling that this is maybe a little bit like trying to do a Final Destination thing where we're predicting how the person is about to die. In this reading, it's less about the meaning of the card and more about kind of being spooky so we know what's going to happen later on. So, first one, fail. The next person to get a reading is Meline, and the final card that she gets is the Hanged Man. And the message that Haley gives her is that as a Pisces, she is someone who likes to run away from her problems, but she has to realize that soon enough it will all be water under the bridge, which again, now that we're seeing this pattern, I was like, oh, water under the bridge. I wonder if Meline is going to find herself on a bridge later and possibly meet her death. If we're looking about it in the way of how does the Hanged Man add to this or take away from it, it does actually work with the definition of this card. The Hanged Man is all about letting go. And again, I think that dying is kind of the ultimate surrender of life, so it kind of fits. The next person to get a reading is Paige, who we learn is a Virgo. And the final clarifying card for her is the Magician. And the warning that Haley gives her is that the Magician's bag of tricks will prevent her from seeing clearly. Again, that does lead to foreshadowing. We do see Paige later on almost kind of sucked into this alternate reality. All of these things make for a very interesting death scene. But does it relate to the tarot card meaning? No. The Magician is all about manifestation and knowing that you have all of the tools on your table to make you successful. You just have to know how to use them. So in that way, I felt like they're kind of using more the idea of our performative magician and less about the actual meaning of the tarot card. I don't know if we're keeping a tally here, but they're not doing very well. The next person to get a reading is Paxton, and his character kind of serves as the comedic relief in the film, and we learn that he's a Taurus, which is an identity that he fully embraces by the end of the film. At first we see him a little skeptical about horoscopes and tarot, but by the end he is a astrology girly to his core. The card that he gets is the Fool. In this deck it's referred to as the Seeker, but it's the same archetype. The Fool card represents kind of new beginnings and starting out on a new path. The warning that Haley gives Paxton is don't let himself get boxed in. So right away I'm like, that doesn't really relate to the meaning of the Fool card. But then when I started to think about how tarot has its own meaning traditionally in an upright position, but then if we see a card reversed, it's what we call a shadow meaning. So then I started to kind of think, okay, if these cursed cards are coming to life as manifestations, wouldn't they then be the shadow meaning to the tarot card? So when I started to look at the shadow meaning of the Fool card, it started to make a little bit more sense. The reversed Fool is a fear of the unknown. If the upright Fool is wanting us to take that brave step forward into a new beginning, the reversal is like a fear of doing that. So there is a stuckness there. So when Haley's saying, don't allow yourself to get boxed in, I see that as a stuckness. So maybe I'm drawing some thin connections here, but I really wanted to make it work. And I do see a through way, I guess, into how the reversed Fool could relate to kind of what happens to Paxton. If I could nerd out about one more tiny detail of the way that Paxton doesn't die, but something happens to him. But he's in the elevator, and suddenly all the elevator buttons just change to the symbol for a Taurus, which is such a small detail. Maybe people wouldn't notice, but I did, and I was like, I see you, tarot movie. I know what you're doing. And it seems like you kind of know what you're doing too. The next person to get a reading is Lucas, and we learn that he is a Capricorn, and the card that's drawn for him is the Hermit card. The warning that Haley gives him is to beware of the Hermit and not let his light take him down a wrong path. So once again, I'm sitting there in the theater with my arms crossed. I'm like, that is not what the Hermit is about. The Hermit is all about introspection and taking some time away to do some soul searching. So when she says that the Hermit's light will lead him down a dark path, I was like, that doesn't really fit. But then again, when we think about the reversed or the shadow meaning of the card, it is about loneliness and isolation. So the warning of this card is that if you take too long for that self-exploration, you could isolate yourself, which then leads to loneliness, which can lead to depression, which I guess ultimately could lead you down a dark path. So if I think about it that way, it does kind of work. So I mean, this one kind of gets a 50-50, I think, for me. The second last person to get a reading is Grant. We learned that he is a Leo, and he is actually Haley's boyfriend / ex-boyfriend in the movie. The card that he gets is the Devil card. And again, we've seen this card come up in multiple films that we've looked at, and it's usually meant to scare us. In this one, the Devil card is kind of asking us to look inward and kind of address our darker side, our inner demons, to see them for who they are and address them. The message that Haley gives him is to face his demons or risk losing someone important. Now, at this point in the film, they're kind of like about to break up. So of course he sees this as kind of a dig towards him, and he rejects the reading and kind of storms off. What we see later on in the film is actually just that. He has to come face to face with the devil and is quite literally almost dragged to hell. And finally, after doing readings for all her friends and unknowingly predicting all of their deaths, Haley does a reading for herself. And the final card that she pulls is, you guessed it, the Death card.
What's it say?
Same thing it always says. Love's gonna be the death of me.
In conjunction to this card, we see the Lovers and the Two of Cups kind of off to the side. And so that makes her say that her love will be the death of her. There is a quote in this film that comes up a few times in relation to the death card. In readings, death can signal the end or the beginning of something. But in this case, it just means death. And they say that twice in the film, which just caused me to groan, because they are proving that they know what the meaning of the card is, but they're ignoring it anyway for the plot. They're like, I know that the death card doesn't really mean death, but in this case it does, which is kind of annoying as somebody who interprets cards, but whatever. Overall, I would say this film was a fun exercise for me as somebody who just totally nerds out about tarot cards in film. And I don't know if you were keeping score, but I would say overall, maybe 50-50. Some of them were kind of relevant. Some of them I could stretch to make it work, but mostly it kind of felt like a plot device to introduce us to some pretty cool demons and watch some teenagers meet their end in interesting and creative ways. The film isn't perfect by any means, but the creature design is fun, and how they use tarot to kind of foreshadow the way that each person dies is interesting. But what it does do is result in some pretty impressive kills, especially when you think that this movie is a PG-13 rating. And I was excited because it is truly a coming together of my two special interests, which is tarot and horror. So you guys know I was going to nerd out on this one. And I really had a fun time talking about it, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. Well, that does it for another episode of Tarot Tarot here on RUE MORGUE TV. Please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you have any suggestions for future Tarot episodes, please leave them in the comments below. So join me next time and we'll see what's in the cards.